Hi guys, welcome to another video, another not review but a test, head-to-head battle between two pro audio speakers. In one corner we had the JBL JRX 100, which is on the bottom here. Let me go back here. These two. And in the other corner, we have these on the top, the Yamaha SV15. So, how do they sound? How do they play? And who is the best one? Well, they are basically competing head to head, regardless of how you see it. Yes, there's maybe a little bit of difference in age. Yamaha speakers are probably a little bit older than the JBL speakers, but they are basically the same. And what do I mean by that? Well, they are mid-level models from both companies. Not the cheapest line, not the most expensive line. They're both passive, and they're both two ways with a 15-inch woofer and a horn. And they're both bass reflex cabinets. Both have the ports on the front. Both have rubber feet, and there are a little bit. Both have carpets. Now, the difference. Well, and another thing. Both has a metal mesh grill. Now, let's look at the differences. The JBL cabinet is a little bit bigger in volume than the Yamaha. So that should speak somehow to lower bass response. But we're coming back to that. The JBL has two handles, one on each side of the cabinet, right here. Metal cabinet, metal handles in the cabinet itself, on the side. The JBL has a connector plate with a 1/4-inch jack. Yamaha has a 1/4-inch jack as well. But, like I said, the handles on the JBL are on the side, and there's two of them, so you can lift it like this. The Yamaha has one handle on top of the cabinet, so you have to lift it like this. It's like a metal vinyl reinforced handle for comfortable grip. So that's the difference, the size of the cabinet and the handles. That's the outside difference. Now, let's look at the bass ports, or the bass reflex ports. The JBL have two, one on each side on the top of the woofer, which is like kind of like triangle shaped. And the Yamaha has also two ports on top of the woofer, which is round. Some people discuss that round is better. Some say that triangle shaped are better. I really can't say that it makes any difference. The biggest difference is when it comes to the horn flares. The horn flare on the JBL is way, way, way bigger. And when I'm saying way bigger, we're talking about 5 to 6 times bigger horn flare on the JBL. So that plays an effect. I'll come back to that as well. Now, what did I use to test it with? Well, I only have a couple of different types of pro audio amplifiers that I'm using for that. I'm not using any of the small ones. So when I sat down, I was like going to do this comparison test. I was thinking, well, I should do this, and I should pay really good attention to the amplifiers. Even though it's two ways with a 15-inch You can drive that with a fairly mid-sized amplifier, let's say a couple of hundred watts, and you can get a good result. But I chose to use the Electro Voice CPS2T, which is like, 8 ohm is like 450, 475 watts per channel. So I really loaded these speakers with power. I also did, just for fun, hook up an old Fender Pro amplifier, which I haven't looked up any specs on, so I'm not sure quite. I think it's about 250 watts per channel, 250, 275, something around there. And there was a big difference. The Electro Voice amplifiers were way superior to the Fender amp. I felt the Fender amp was good. It played really nice, but there was a couple of steps up when I hooked up the Electro Voice amplifier. And like I said, I used the CPS2T. Now, testing pro audio top speakers or high frequency or full range speakers, as many will call them, without a subwoofer is kind of like, nah, you don't get the full effect, if you know what I mean. You get, because these cabinets are limited on how low they will play. So you use pro audio speakers, you need to have subwoofers along with them. But this was just to see which one of these two plays the best in the given frequency range. So I hooked up the Yamaha first, and they were not standing like this when I tested them. They were standing side by side, so I had them in my same height of hearing. So I hooked up the Yamaha, and I had played these before, but I played them separate, not like head to head or like an A-B comparison test. So I know they both sound good. So the Yamaha is very surprising in that matter, that it has a very clear mid-range and upper mid-bass. Very distinct, very to the point. Maybe in the upper mid-range, where the mid-range and the tweeter is crossed over, you have a little bit of a dip, and there's a little bit of confusion, if that's the right word to use it, or the right way to say it. There seems to be a little bit of clashing of frequencies right there where the bass and the mid ends, and the tweeter takes over. And I believe that this has to do with the tweeter that is used and the horn flare that is used, because it almost feels like the mid and the lower frequency all the way up to the crossover point where the tweeter takes over and when the tweeter like comes in, I feel like the lower frequencies are overpowering or overplaying the tweeter, and the tweeter can at some point, when you push the speakers, sound a little bit stressed. So I think that has all to do with the tweeter being so small. And just to give you maybe look at this one. The tweeter up there is not big. It's maybe like this wide, 6-7 inches wide, and probably 2 or 3 inches high. So it doesn't spread the sound as much, especially on the up and down. But it spreads it like sideways a little bit, but it's very direct. So when I was standing in front of it, when I went off axis and I went to the sides, it played a difference. It played a big role, I have to say. So these speakers could probably benefit from maybe a bigger horn or a bigger compression driver and a bigger horn flare. A bigger horn would definitely be better, especially to spread the sound more sideways, because the dispersion on these horns are very, very limited. I haven't looked it up what it is, but I am very surprised if it's a 90-degree spread on them. I want to say maybe around 60, 65. They might be 90, but it doesn't look like it. So they take the 450, 475 watts that I put on them fairly good. But like I said, at some point, the tweeter started to sound a little bit stressed. And I could hear some distortion right there in the crossover point between mids and highs. That disappeared when I lowered the volume again. And of course, I mean, that came when I really started to push it. But it just shows that the more you push smaller tweeter or smaller compression drivers, you will get some distortion. Bass, there's not much bass to talk about. You can hear a little bit. These Yamahas, I think, have a cutoff around 45-50 hertz, and then of course with the roll off and everything. So you probably very faintly can hear frequencies down in like maybe low 40s, but that's about it. Not much bass to talk about, and not much low frequency reproduction from them. So the Yamahas absolutely need a subwoofer, and that's what they were built, and that was the intent behind them. So don't get me wrong, that's given. All pro audio speakers need a subwoofer. If they don't, they're not proper pro audio. I like the sound in the Yamaha up to a certain point, and then they kind of like get a little bit away from me. They sound a little bit stressed, like I said, but also the woofer, if you look at the woofer that is in here, it doesn't have the big ruffles or the cloth surround with the accordion style surround. It's very, very small and short space between each fold. So that will tell you that the frequency will also be determined by that, because we're talking about cone movement and how far the cone can travel. And with an accordion like that, it is kind of stiff, and it has a limit on how far the cone can travel in and out. Very easy to use, they're not super heavy, so they're easy to move around even with one handle on the top. You can always carry it differently. You can hold the handle with one hand and grab it underneath the other one, and that's easy as well. Like I said, it has rubber feet, can stand on its own on a surface. It also have a pole mount on the bottom, so you could put it on poles or stands that I have used in the past. So for a weekend DJ, or for a smaller, or a wedding player, or someone who just wants some pair of speakers that is not killing the bank, yeah, the Yamahas, it can be a good choice, but you absolutely need a subwoofer to go with it. And I would say that if you put 300 watts on them, you're probably better off. 450, 475 being pushed was a little bit too much on them. I felt that that was but those electro voice amplifiers are some beast. They are really beast. But 300 watts amplifier, maybe 350, and you pair them up with a pair of subwoofers, and you are good to go. Not a bad buy, not a bad speaker at all, but it sounded, like I said, a little bit stressed, and that was the biggest negative thing that I could find with them. Now let's look at the JBL compared to the Yamaha, and that was a totally different experience. I have tested these JBLs in the past, and I've used like 150, 200, 250, 275, I think and 300 watt amplifiers on them, and they have soaked that up like no problem. And now when I put 450, 475 on them, it was not even a problem then. And let me tell you right off from the start, these did not sound stressed like the Yamahas did. And they have that typical JBL sound, which means hard, controlled, kind of like a little bit sterile sometimes, because JBL sound can be a little bit harsh and a little bit sterile, and they can sound a little bit cold in some models. That was not the thing with these. The JRX 100 is, in my mind, a very, very good pro audio speaker. The biggest difference in sound between the JBL compared to the Yamaha can be summed up in 3 places. You did not have a stressed tweeter like you had in the Yamaha. The crossover point here between the woofer and the tweeter is way more balanced, way better, and that comes back to the bigger horn flare here too, so it doesn't sound as stressed because of the bigger horn flare. But I also think that the compression driver is a bigger one. I think the Yamaha is a 3/4 inch compression driver, and I think that it looks like the JBL is a 1 inch. So a bigger compression driver, of course, will sound less stressed, but with a bigger flare, and it has a bigger spread. So when I went off axis, and I was standing in the middle, it sounded really good. So when I went off axis to the sides, it was still going with me in a very good way. So the JBL's covers a wider area. So it can probably be used in bigger rooms. The Yamahas can be used in smaller rooms. Now, if we look at the woofer in the JBL, it also has an accordion style surround, but the folds in the accordion style is bigger. The dips or the tops are bigger. The spaces between each fold is bigger. That tells me, and that it showed, that the woofer has a little bit more movement. It can move further in and out, and that had a positive effect on the lower frequencies that this speaker can reproduce. And it felt like it played the lower frequencies better than the Yamaha. So was there like earth-shaking bass in these JBLs? No. These also need subwoofer to get the complete sound stage and the complete sound reproduction that you want, because these are also cut off at a certain point. I'm not sure what point, but they're probably cut off around 40-45 hertz, like most pro audio speakers in this size is. And of course, with the roll off and stuff, you probably hit the lower 40s, maybe higher 30s, because it felt like they played lower frequencies better than the Yamaha. And it also felt that you had some lower frequency present with the JBLs that you did not have with the Yamaha. Sound wise and sound quality wise, to be a pro audio or PA speaker, it sounded really good. I like the sound in these JBLs, and it sounds fuller than the Yamaha, and that comes back to the cabinet being a little bit bigger. I'm not sure how many cubic feet or how many liters, depending on which part of the world you live in, how much the difference is, but there is a significant difference in size. And that will, of course, play and roll on the sound. Bigger cabinets tend to seem to sound fuller, sound bigger, and a little bit more better stereo perspective and imaging and stuff like that. Smaller cabinets are very often, like the Yamahas, are very often projected straightforward with a little bit of spread. The JBL spreads the sounds better. So if I was gonna pick and choose here, I would definitely go with the JBLs, just because, and they don't have that typical JBL sound. Not completely, to a certain degree they do, but they at no point did they sound cold. At no point did they sound sterile. At no point did they sound anemic, even though they didn't have a subwoofer present. They performed very well. So my clear choice between the Yamaha and the JBL in this test would be the JBL JRX 100. Of course, there might be some options here when these were new on the market. Maybe you could get them with a Tolex, maybe you could get them with paint, because most pro audio manufacturers that I have seen and that I have dealt with over the years have had models that you could get both as painted or with cloth or carpet. These have carpet, both of them. I'm not sure if the JBL JRX 100 was offered back in the day with either carpet or paint, or if the Yamaha SV15 was offered with carpet or paint, or if it was just carpet all along. What else can I say about the JBLs? Well, when I use the same amplifier, I use the Electro Voice CPS 2T, and I tell you, these JBL speakers right here, they create some freaking punch when you push them a little bit. They took the 450, 475, 100 watts, pretty darn good. They didn't sound stressed, like I said. And it didn't sound like that amplifier was too much for them. Of course, I didn't push them all the way. I had set a limit where I was like, okay, this is how loud I'm going to play. And that would be about 1 o'clock on the volume control. And it played loud. It played really loud. In here, in this room, I didn't want to push them anymore. So, what else beside the sound would I put my dollars into? Well, first of all, I feel that having two handles, one on each side of the cabinet, is better than having a vinyl strap, steel, metal reinforced handle on top. Is to me better. Yes, you can carry the Yamahas maybe like this, but you have to put them up from your body. So it's going to be kind of like you're going to get fatigue after a while if you carry too many of those, and if you have to carry them over a long stretch. Having two handles makes things a lot easier. These are all steel handles with a steel scoop on the inside. They're one piece. It's not like a handle that is screwed onto a scoop. So it's one piece handle, very solid, very good build. When it comes to the cabinet, both of them are very, very solid, good quality of build on the cabinets. So there's no difference in build quality on the cabinets. Driver quality, the woofer and in the JBL and the woofer in the Yamaha, the build quality is about equal. It's the same. They're just built differently. They're configured differently. I feel that the JBL is built to a bigger frequency response area than the Yamaha. So there's a little bit difference there. The tweeter in the JBL, and if I'm not mistaken, in this model, I think they're using selenium tweeters. I'm not sure, but I think it is. And the tweeter in this JBL blows the Yamaha tweeter out of the water without a problem and without a doubt. Huge difference there. But like I said, cabinet quality is about the same. Very good on both. The mesh grill on the JBL has round holes. The Yamaha has square ones. The thickness on the grills are a little bit thicker, a little bit stiffer on the JBL. I feel that, and I can see it, the JBL has no dents or anything like that. The Yamaha grill has a few dents here and there. And let me just remind you that both of these speakers are used. I got them. I got the JBLs last year, and I got the Yamahas last summer, and I got the Yamahas late fall last year. So I think there was like 3 or 4 months in between. So I've had both of them about the same time frame. When I got them, I just went over them, made sure that everything worked, cleaned the connectors, make sure that there's a good connection point on the back. And I mean, you can find these everywhere. What do you have to pay for something like this? Well, the Yamahas, they range from like $300 to $400 for a pair. The JBLs, somewhere between $450 and $600. And if you see them online, most of the time it's either Reverb or eBay. And most of the time you will not see shipping on them because they are quite heavy. And to ship these, it's going to be big boxes. You have to ship 2 boxes because you have to have separate boxes for each speaker. And you have to have solid, good packing material. And then we're talking about 4-inch styrofoam at least. So it's going to be big boxes, heavy boxes. It's going to cost a lot to ship unless you use alternative shipping method like U-ship or something like that. Even though you have to pay maybe like $150, $200 more for the JBL, I want to say that $150, $200 is well worth it. Of course, it depends on your budget, but it also depends on how much room do you have, since the JBLs are bigger, and what are you going to use them for? If your clientele, if you use them for DJing, JBL. If you're using them for, let's say, a youth club with fixed installation, then the Yamahas will function perfectly, because most youth clubs don't have big rooms, and normally not a lot of people. We're talking about maybe somewhere between 50 and 150 people in the room. So the Yamahas would work perfectly for that. Or if you have, let's say you are a DJ who does a lot of shopping malls, or you just have some companies that calls in and say, hey, we need you in our lunchroom or our auditorium and it's a smaller auditorium. Of course, the Yamaha has this area where you can use it, but the JBLs can be used in the same areas, plus they can be used in other areas. If you're going to use these speakers outside, my choice would be the JBLs all day long, just because it plays louder, that's for sure. It plays with more punch, fuller sound, but the spread of the sound is what makes them so much better outdoors than the Yamahas. So, like I said, smaller room indoors, it's either or. But the better sound quality is definitely JBL. Don't get me wrong on that. So that was the Pro Audio test. Haven't done too many of those in the past. They've been mostly like hi-fi and vintage audio. But I felt it was time to do a Pro Audio speaker test. And why not when I have both the Yamaha and the JBL in stock, in store. Both are for sale. The Yamaha I have listed for $399. The JBLs are $599. So there's a $200 difference. You can see it right there. And pick up only in the store, of course. So, I mean, you can't go wrong with any of them. But my first choice would be the JBLs, of the ones that I have here. I have other Pro Audio speakers in storage and at home that are better than both of these. And at some point they will come down here and we'll do a test with them as well. But they are way, way bigger than these. Way bigger. So until next time, take care, guys.